Okay, let's get into this week's big topic. And as mentioned at the start, we're actually going to cover two different topics this week. So first up, Aberdeen adopted an ultra-defensive approach against us on Saturday. Some are referring to it as Goodwin ball, Paddy. And they very nearly took a point from the game. We've seen this kind of approach before from teams like Livingston, but is this an acceptable approach from a side who are generally seen as the third force in Scottish football? And is it something Celtic will just have to continue trying to find solutions for? Paddy, what's your initial response to that?
Obviously, watching the game on Saturday, it's, you know, you're playing against the team that are really pushing to be the third best force in the country. And I get, obviously, they had that performance at Ibrox where they went for it and they got found out, they get beat 4-1. I get you maybe want to shore things up a little bit, but it was only until the 90th minute, before we scored, the 80th minute, that they actually started to kind of go for it a little bit. And then when we did score, they had to try. I just thought, really, really embarrassing stuff for me. I understand how valuable a point could be and how snatching a win would be an incredible result for them, but I just find it so negative. I really do. And I get it. I understand that we could pick teams off. We really could. But if you go 1 or 2 goals down, then you maybe look to defend a bit more and keep the score low. I just don't think you sit in like that for the full 90 minutes. It's really...
It's funny there, in the mystery cell I've mentioned the win against Barcelona. We done it against Barcelona. What's the difference?
What's the difference? The difference on that, no, I can't answer on that front there. A different thinking manager. We've also went up against Barcelona and get picked off when we were with Rodgers.
Yeah.
Fans won't like to receive a drubbing, I totally get that, but also there needs to be something. There needs to be an attempt at least. And I get that we won against Barca. I do. I understand where you're coming from there. But I just, you know, what chance have you got as an Aberdeen fan watching that?
And I think on that very note, Willie Miller, Aberdeen legend, has been speaking today about just how disappointed he was. And he's saying that, you know, that's just not what Aberdeen fans are used to, even though they've never reached the dizzy heights that they did under Ferguson in the early 80s. But, you know, as I say, generally speaking, they've been deemed Scotland's third force, and it's quite a departure for them to set up in such a negative way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was quite clear he was, you know, trying to copy, you know, his former club's approach earlier in the season when St Mirren beat us, with effectively your goalkeeper, 8 others at the back, defending their own box, and 2 guys up front. Every time they got the ball, it was a ball over the top, and Starfelt and Carter Vickers just ate it up. And you know, we went to St Mirren and it was Welsh and Jens were our centre backs that day, and I think there's a huge difference between those two and what we got at the weekend. And it was just bizarre tactics, because even though they had those, you know, 9 including the goalkeeper, you know, in the final third of the pitch, we still had space on the wings. The amount of overlaps we got, the amount of times Jota and Abada in the second half got to run at the fullback. And my big kind of frustration was I didn't think we did enough with those opportunities. I think there was real times when we had the ball left and we could have moved it quickly to go right and then back, and it was just a little bit laborious. But in general, it was disappointing. Tough game to watch.
Yeah, we described Aberdeen's formation, genuinely, not being flippant, as 8-0-2. And that's what it was. They had their back 5. They had kind of 3 guys who were still defensive, but just in front of the back 5. Nothing in the midfield, and Duke and Miovski up top. And that must have been it was a tough watch for us as Celtic fans. It must have been hellish for an Aberdeen fan.
Been brutal. Anytime they were limping it forward, it was a go on to try and chase Carter Vickers or Starfelt down. You're going back to the St Mirren game. I totally agree with you. It's kind of the same setup, but what St Mirren done differently is they were getting 4 or 5 bodies up at every time.
First goal.
They were counter-attacking us, and there was just none of that from Aberdeen at all. The way they set up, for a team that have been really, really strong at home and like scoring for fun.
6 wins out of 7, I think.
9 out of 10 in all competitions.
So impressive home form.
Just really, really surprised at it, you know.
The guys I feel sorry for most are the 2 strikers. I thought Duke, on the rare occasion that he got the ball, looked like he might provide something.
What about his dive?
It was horrendous. But Miovski barely touched the ball. And listen, those 2 guys didn't sign for Aberdeen to just run about on a cold Saturday afternoon. I mean, so we see this approach regularly. As I mentioned, teams like Livingston are particularly famed for it. But was it a surprise, Paddy, as I say, to see it from Aberdeen? You know, is it a sad reflection on Scottish football that it's got to this? And Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, maybe historically Dundee United, they're the teams that would usually be much braver against Celtic and over the years would be, those that you'd expect to come and have a go and give us a challenge. But, is that all changing?
It obviously seems to be the case. I would always kind of say it would be your lower league teams that would probably try and adopt that tactic, that style against us. And those, you always fear going to Pittodrie, you always fear going to Tynecastle, you always fear even going to Easter Road, potential banana skins, in the league. But as I said, I felt very, very comfortable about our performance, and that is after a 5-week break. And I just thought we dominated the game. There wasn't anything from them. So what they've tried to do has failed miserably. We're talking about the balls that are getting over the back of our defenders. They were hitting hope. There wasn't anything like, I'm going to try and play him in here to beat the line, I'm going to try and play this ball into the channel. It was hitting hope material. They wanted rid of it. I'm just very, very surprised at the way they set up, because they have played extremely well in certain games this season. It's just a poor performance.
The thing about it is they were 5-6 minutes away from getting a result, and that's exactly what it is. I think Jim Goodwin's a decent fella, and he spoke after the game and he wasn't pulling any punches. He put the paws up and said, this is what we've tried, because you mentioned it there, Paddy, they went to Ibrox, opened up and get beat 4-1, quote unquote, going on 10. That's what Goodwin said. So he's tried something different, which is his prerogative. his duty is to Aberdeen, the fans, the board, himself, his coaching staff. It's not up to him to go and make life easy for Celtic, so I understand that. But a pointed question, Hamish, and obviously, a tricky one to answer, but what would you do if you were the Aberdeen manager coming up against Celtic? What would your approach be? You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't at times.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. As a fan, I don't know if you guys agree, the games that worry me more domestically are the ones when teams really have a go at us, really get in our face, really press us high. I'm not saying that, Celtic are weak or easily exploited, but those are the games when at times even this great Celtic team can look a little bit rattled. And I just think whenever we go into these kind of games and the opposition sit deep like that, and don't get me wrong, I hate it. One part of me hates it because it's not a good watch, but the other part of me just loves it because Celtic usually almost always win these games. When I see a team defending like that from the first minute, which is what it was, I know that we'll break them down, more often than not. It's the games when teams really have a go and unsettle us and we look a bit all over the place that worry me.
Perfect example is 4-3 Hearts. Hearts gave us a game.
What I mean, yeah.
You're spot on. And I just think that Aberdeen should be looking at that and saying, well, do you know what? If we do put the pressure on them, we might take our chances this time that they maybe didn't do at Ibrox. It's just, I understand a point is valuable, but surely you take the games against Celtic and Rangers and say, do you know what? Let's go for it. Whatever happens here. I
think so as well. I think from Aberdeen's point of view, so we've spoken there a couple of times about them being the third force in the country. Last season they were far from that, and they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase, having replaced Stephen Glass as manager and Goodwin came in, I think, in February. So his job first and foremost is to re-establish himself as firm third force in the country, and maybe from that point of view it's just a case of being the best of the rest, seeing anything you get from Celtic and Rangers as a bonus. And on that note, why not just have a go at it? It borders on anti-football, and I don't think that's Jim Goodwin's principles in general, so it was just, that's why it was such a surprise to see him take that approach.
Does it not make you proud to support this Celtic team though? A team that we literally went to the Bernabeu and we lost, but really had a go, created chances. And Ange always talks about what you learn from matches. It's all about learning and improving. Even if Aberdeen get a draw at the weekend, what are they learning for that?
Exactly.
That's a perfect point, because I would say Aberdeen are to Celtic is what we are to Real Madrid, and we get, was it 5-1? We get cuffed Real Madrid, and there was a unusual sense of pride or even hope coming out of that game. I can't imagine how Aberdeen fans must have felt going home after that one. So it's just it's a strange one and quite a surprising one, and it's caused a lot of debate. On the back of Saturday's result, there's also a pretty entertaining thread, thanks to Paddy for sharing earlier on. So it's from LilZ7 on Twitter, so that's an account well worth following. So at LILZE_7, LilZ7. And he screen grabbed some posts from what looks to be a popular Rangers forum, Hamish. Don't know if it's one that you frequent. And you've got all the usual stuff, all the usual comments, on the back of Celtic's result on Saturday. So, lucky how the do they keep doing this? And it's the hope that kills you and all that kind of stuff, which is all well and good. But beyond that, there's a couple of, what I'd say, unique suggestions, Paddy, about what Jim Goodwin and others should maybe check out next time around. So, suggestion one, quote unquote, Our ball boys better be prepared to slow down every ball that goes out of play for them. Let's slow it right down and break up their style of play. Okay. Suggestion number 2. This is, of course, for the game that's coming up on the 2nd of January. Suggestion number 2. I hope every fan pays attention to this too. If the ball lands in your lap during the game, hold on to that thing. Right? Now, I don't know if Michael Beale, Pep, Jurgen Klopp, or if they're running low on ideas and inspiration, they maybe adopt this kind of approach. But it's all pretty tongue in cheek, Hamish. But on a more serious note, do you think domestically, at least, teams are just struggling to find a genuine way of dealing with this Celtic side?
We're so far clear of the rest of Scottish football, and the really worrying thing for the rest of them is the gap's only going to get bigger. Celtic are only going to get better under Ange, and we're going to see more and more of this. We saw it earlier in the season when Motherwell came to Celtic Park, and Stephen Hamill the day before the game spent half his press conference talking about the fact that they can't control the ball boys and all of that stuff at Celtic Park, and they have to do what they can do to slow the game down. And you may remember their goalkeeper Kelly, a minute gone, he's time wasting. Yep. So you're going to see this more and more often, and I'd love to know what Ange thinks of it. I'd love, because we know that Ange doesn't tend to get bothered about things he can't control. That's the one thing we've learned about Ange. He can't control how other teams approach, but it must frustrate him as well, especially with stuff like VAR and that stopping the game as well. I'd love to know what Ange thinks.
We had a game, can't remember who it was against, but basically it was maybe Ross County. They slowed it way down as well, and there was a couple of VAR decisions, and I spoke to Johnny, who I sat next to, and I said, I generally think the ball's been in play for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's half. It was torture, absolute torture. It's so frustrating.
We've seen that approach in the World Cup where there was 10 and 11 minutes overtime, extra time. Applied it in the game, and I thought it was really quite refreshing.
Yeah.
And the hope was that Scottish football and other leagues may apply that. Doesn't look like it based on the weekend showing. There wasn't a great deal, added on either half for Celtic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Ange is all about, he's a football purist, and he wants to see the game played out in its in its true sense. Paddy, Hamish touched on it there. Celtic aren't a side that have peaked. This is a side that are absolutely on a continuing upward trajectory, and it's just going to get harder and harder for teams to deal with.
Well, if the narrative on a forum for your biggest rivals is talking about ways to slow us down, then it just shows the fear that's there. What type of game plan do you pick to go into a game against us at your own home stadium? Is it a game plan where you want your fans to run out the stadium with a ball like they've done previously? It's crazy that that's where we're at just now. But having said that, this is all down to the work of one man, and he's going to continue to make sure.
Anthony Ralston?
Anthony Ralston, aye. No, this is down to Ange. It's going to continue. It's going to get better, and we're only going to get stronger. So they need to do something or look at something differently. The approach that Hearts took against us in that game, the 4-3 game, albeit they lost the game, but they got goals against us. They seen that there was gaps, and that's what we'll try and fix. Yeah. Other teams need to look at something else.
Maybe so, and the fact that, we're all aware now that Celtic hit their 200th goal there in 84 games under Ange, it tells you this is a team that just, attacking football is what we're all about. It's an average of 2.38 goals per game. That includes some of the European stuff, so it's only going to get more frightening for some of the teams that we face domestically. In terms of the second part of the big topic this week, so Saturday saw the return of captain Callum McGregor, who had been out since a knee injury that he picked up against Leipzig back on the 5th of October. In his absence, Celtic went on to win all 8 of the domestic games they played. But the question is, does Saturday's man of the match performance from him give us a timely reminder of the impact and influence he has on this Celtic side?
Yeah, if we needed it, I feel like everyone is just well aware of how good McGregor is. He's such a funny Celtic career, because I can't pinpoint the moment when Callum McGregor became the main guy, the most amazing Celtic captain. Because he just went for so long as kind of being the nearly guy who, wasn't quite getting into teams, and then he became a big player. But he's just become huge for Celtic. I suppose Scott Brown leaving was kind of the moment, and he got his own team. But he's just such a good player, such a good leader as well, and just such an important part of that team. And I think he'll, looking at kind of positions where Ange won't tend to rotate quite as much. I think McGregor, the two centre-backs, I think he might look to try and get Carter Vickers and Starfelt back together consistently, and obviously the goalkeeper. I think those are kind of the four positions we won't see rotated as much the rest of the season.
Yeah, Paddy, he's a player who, as Hamish has alluded to, he's kind of almost caught us by surprise in terms of just emerging as this absolute focal point and leader in this Celtic team. And maybe it was, the shadow of Scott Brown, playing under Scott Brown for so many years and what he must have learned, but it's allowed him to develop into this leader on the quiet perhaps. And as soon as Bruni stepped aside there a season and a half ago, he's just slotted into this role with the minimal fuss.
I'm not taking anything away from what you guys are saying on that. I actually think that the leadership qualities and that direct attitude from him with the rest of the team was in play when Brown was there as well. Okay. I listened to an interview with Scott Brown not that long ago, and he was talking about who he would love to, like the player he would love to take down to Fleetwood, and he spoke about McGregor and Forrest. But what he said about Callum McGregor was so complimentary, and just that he's driven, he goes to the high standards that every professional should be at, and he's not surprised that he's went on to be a successful captain for us already. A big factor you're kind of talking about at the point where did it maybe click for McGregor with the Celtic team, because I remember when obviously Dyla started to give him the chance and bring him in, he was still kind of playing just that off, like an inside forward kind of role, and kind of what he was doing with Notts County. So like what he's doing in midfield wasn't really something we were aware of. For me, it really started to click under Rodgers. I think maybe that just the level of training that Rodgers brought to the team, pulling away from the old guard such as your Commons and the likes that was part of the old Lennon setup. That level of professionalism, easy to say, I just think is really, really where McGregor just thought, this is where I want to be. You see the likes of even when he played alongside Stuart Armstrong and Scott Brown in that midfield, they were unreal at points, some of the games, some of just the easy goals we picked off against Rangers and some of the routes that we gave them as well. I think there is when he found out and realised, this is where I'm meant to be. I'm playing at the highest level here with Celtic. I'm going to kick on for here.
And a real big moment a couple of years ago, if that, was when he signed that new contract. Because I think even at that point, people are wondering, is he going to go down south? He's good enough to play for the majority of teams in the Premier League. I genuinely believe that. He's sublime. Yeah. And he made the decision so clearly that he wanted to take the Scott Brown path and stay at Celtic and captain Celtic and win 20, 30 trophies. He's probably already got nearly that. And people talk about down south has been this glamorous league with all the best managers and most of the best players, but being captain of Celtic is an amazing thing to be, and he's going to be captain for hopefully years to come.
Yeah, and there's no doubt he could get down and slot into a lot of midfields down in that Premier League. I've got some stats here. Do you remember his debut, Paddy? Would you remember when and who?
Champions League qualifier.
Correct.
Reykjavik.
Correct.
Well done, Paddy.
Anything more on that?
He scored.
He scored the winning goal in a 1-0 win away to Reykjavik.
What colour were we wearing that night?
Great work, Paddy.
The yellow top on.
So I'll give you some of the stats. So he made his first team debut under Ronnie Dyla. That was July 2014, scoring the winner in a 1-0 win away to Reykjavik in the Champions League, or a Champions League qualifier. Interesting stat from Saturday, you may well have heard. He had 170 completed passes on Saturday versus Aberdeen, as in the whole team of Aberdeen, who had 118. So it's just incredible differences. He's closing in on 400 appearances for Celtic. He's currently on 390. He's got 59 goals and 68 assists in that time. Trophy-wise, Hamish, you touched on it. He's won 7 Scottish Premierships, 4 Scottish Cups, 5 League Cups. I'm just trying to do the maths, Paddy. 16 trophies. And he's also just one short of his 50th cap for Scotland. What I do think is quite interesting is the change in his position over the years. You've touched on it there. So, in his absence, O'Reilly stepped in, who was pretty good in the number 6. We've yet to see much of Abelgard or Ideguchi to really give them a proper assessment. But McGregor definitely seems to be the best sitting midfielder at the club by some distance. But his position in the park, it's definitely evolved over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as Paddy said, wide right, I think, in that debut. And then he was more of an attacking player. You still get people who say this thing. They say, Callum McGregor, I like him further forward, and I don't see that at all. I think where he's playing right now in that deeper role in midfield is where he's at his best. I think he's the link between defence and midfield. The amount of times he just finds space, drops in, gets the ball for Carter Vickers or Starfelt, and just one touch will sweep it out to a full back or sweep it into, you know, an O'Reilly or Hatate. I think he's so pivotal to how Celtic play. And O'Reilly, I thought O'Reilly was great in there. He did a really good job, but that's not his position. And McGregor just has that. He just looks far more fluid, I think, than O'Reilly, or even someone like Moy, who I think's been great as well. McGregor just brings you that real drive, and he can kind of do everything. I mean, he can tackle as well now. Like he reads the game really well, drops into good areas, and still, even though he's playing slightly deeper than some people would like, he still pops up with goals like Saturday. Yeah,
he's very close to, and this guy is top level, but an N'Golo Kante type player. You know, he carries out that number 6 role with a minimal of fuss. He just gets in, does his job, gets up the road kind of thing, you know, but just he stitches everything together. 170 passes across 90 minutes of football tells you that.
In your first game back in 2 months.
Exactly. He was just driving everything there. Hamish has touched on the new deal as well, which is a great thing because it just shows his absolute commitment to the club. He wants to go down as a legend. He wants to follow in the footsteps of Bruni and others. He signed a new 5-year deal in September of last year, so he's contracted till 2026. And there was talk after, you know, Neil Lennon's last season that McGregor might just see this as a chance to start afresh and move on to pastures new. That might have been the easy out. You know, that might have been an easy escape to say, do you know what, I can take a deal down here and see out the rest of my time, maybe less in the spotlight. But he get the sleeves rolled up. He's seen the opportunity to be the captain of Celtic Football Club, and as Amy says, that is not to be sniffed at by any football player at any level or any stage in their career. And you know, he's really stepped into that role. I was going to ask Paddy, are you confident? So obviously he's 30 in June of this year, I think's the date. June of next year, sorry. Are you confident with the fitness levels he's got that he can continue to be a main part of the side well into his 30s?
Oh, definitely. I think possibly just even with this injury that he has had there, actually may well be a bit of a blessing. You looked at how many games he was playing. He was in and out with Scotland as well. I don't think he's had a proper break in a long time. So just to have that bit of time there, just to kind of take stock and kind of go for it again for the second half of this season will be massive. And he'll have a summer off next season as well, which will be huge unless there's Nation League games again. But I just think that he loves the intensity. He loves playing week in, week out, and he's ever present for us. Some engine on him. I think he'll be playing 35, 36 quite easily.
Yeah, we asked the question before the game on Saturday, you know, would Ange put him right in? And I've asked the question, maybe knowing the answer, but I mean, cliche and all that, it was really like he'd never been away. He was so pivotal, and he's obviously got a point to prove. He's a guy who clearly loves football and doesn't enjoy sitting out. I've seen him speaking about it, and he was saying how frustrating a couple of months that was, and he just stepped in and grabbed that game by the scruff of the neck. Last question on this one, Hamish, before we move on. It was really to ask whether you were surprised at just how well he took to the leadership role, and do you feel it was the right choice for Ange at the time, or was it kind of the only choice we were left with maybe not many leaders following that failed season before it? Yeah, probably a bit of the latter. I actually name drop and bumped into Scott Brown just kind of after he'd left the club, just out in Prestwick actually, funnily enough, and I was kind of chatting to him, just a wee bit of small talk, and I mentioned McGregor, you know, being the captain, and he basically confirmed it right then. He said, you know, McGregor will be the captain, and then Ange obviously came in, and there was a weird period. I think Ange kind of came in and took stock of what he had at the club, and it was a couple of weeks before McGregor was actually confirmed as captain, but I think it was always going to be McGregor. He'd been the one who Celtic had kind of been gearing up to be Brown's successor. You even saw that in some of the videos games when Brown would, you know, in the early days when Brown would kind of sit out, McGregor would take the warm up and wee signs like that. And he's a different leader to Brown. He leads in a different way. I know Brown scored some late goals for us, but I don't think Brown does that what McGregor did on Saturday. But McGregor's he's just so perfect for this Ange team. I was thinking about this. You can't actually think of a better captain for an Ange team. He's good on the ball, really good in tight spaces, doesn't give it away cheaply. Great for an Ange team. His positioning's great, and even all the stuff about wanting to, you know, improve himself, continually improve. McGregor, you know, has continually improved throughout his Celtic career, and I think there's even more in him. I know he is, you know, touching 30, but I think, you know,
really doing it at Champions League levels is the next thing, and he's capable of it.
Yeah.
Look at that Real Madrid game, the match day one. He was one of the best players in the park in that first half against Kroos, Modric, and Tchouameni. So he's capable. Yeah,
and inches away from opening the scoring with that great effort as well. You're right. It's you now can't imagine Celtic without Callum McGregor as skipper. And at that point when Ange was debating, we were speaking on the show about, do we need to go and sign a captain? Do we need to go and pluck a guy from wherever and install him right away as the leader of this team? McGregor saw otherwise, and as you say, Ange took a couple of weeks to make his call, but he's clearly seen something in him, within his conversations and how he's approached that pre-season, before last year. And yeah, he is the perfect fit, and it's so good to have him back for this run-in for the second half of the season. A brilliant player, and he continues to show his worth to this Celtic side.